The watch world is a funny place where even before you meet someone, it's often you follow one another online knowing well you'd be friends even had you met at a bar down the street. I guess in a sense, Instagram serves as a virtual bar for watch geeks like myself. Adam Craniotes and I met through the social media platform where he shares his self deprecating humor, his admiration and allegiance to David Hasselhoff, and of course his pseudo public humiliation of his children. I happen to adore his relationship with his kids, but we're here to chat all things watches, his writing career, his collecting journey, and of course, that Acura MDX with the sport package. Of course, none of this would have been possible had he not routinely met a friend of his at a little upstairs bar in the Koreatown neighborhood of Manhattan. That bar was called RedBar, and so the watch group was named. Please enjoy my conversation with its founder, Mr. Adam Craniotes. I'm your host, Wesley Smith, and you're listening to the Standard Age Podcast.
Can you see me?
I can see you. Look at you in all of your glory. In
All my glory, my hirsute bald glory.
Craniotes. What name is this? What nationality is Craniotes?
It's Greek,
Greek.
terribly common Greek name, but if it was spelled the way it's supposed to be spelled, which would be Kraniotis, it would look a lot more Greek.
Yeah, I was gonna say that visually looks more Greek for sure.
Yeah, they misspelled it at Ellis Island, and my grandfather thought, well, that's what they do when you come to America. They change C's to K's, and this is my American name now. So, yeah, we are the only people in the world who have that name, Craniotis. While there are plenty of us back home, they're not spelled that way.
Amazing. Well, I know you were just in Prague. We exchanged messages regarding Pilsner Urquell, the beer. Tell me about your visit to Prague and why you were there.
Well, I was invited to visit a relatively young Czech watch brand called Robot Watches.
Okay.
It's interesting, robot, because Czechs actually invented the name robot. That was from a play back in the day that was called RUR, and the automated servants. The name robot came from robota, which I guess means indentured or slave or something horrible.
Right.
So but I for one, welcome our new robot overlords when they come. Yeah, so it was a relatively young fellow who decided to start a company that sort of capitalized on what Czech watchmaking heritage there was. So it started about 6 years ago, and it's the ultimate boutique manufacturer in the sense that they only make about 250 to 300 watches a year, and most of them are actually custom commissions. You can actually do the dials any way you want, the handsets. And they do all of that in-house. They make it themselves. The only things they outsource are the movements, which are from Le Jeu Pareil. They're actually very nice.
Nice.
And they have a couple that are exclusive to them, some really nice 8-day movements. And then the cases, I think, they design them, and then the cases come from somewhere within Europe, apparently. So everything, all the production is European.
Cool.
Yeah, so it was fun to see, the small, it's not a micro brand in the sense that they do so much themselves, but it is such a small brand. And I think they're trying to, I don't think, I know, they're actually trying to expand their reach a bit. So they invited me, a bunch of journalists out to, visit Prague to see what their inspirations are, to see the actual operation. And then I stayed a bit longer because we did a RedBar Prague event with
Cool.
Robot. And then there they officially launched their Flieger Friday watch. So they've created a pilot watch, sort of an imagining of what a Czech pilot watch would be today. There's actually a lot of Czech aviation history. So, and it was really inspired by Banu Chopra, who is the founder of RedBar Prague. Him and his partner, they actually do a watch show out there called Micro Praha, I guess Micro Prague.
Yeah.
So this watch is sort of, to celebrate that. So yeah, it was a lot of fun. But I've never been to Prague. So for me, not only was it great to visit the manufacturer, but it's great to visit the country.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm 52 years old, so I'm a child of the Cold War. So when I was growing up, I mean, this was behind the Iron Curtain. You did not go to what was then called Czechoslovakia. Now, of course, it's the Czech Republic. It's been open for decades. And my God, what a beautiful, beautiful city, beautiful country. Definitely going back.
Yeah, for sure. I couldn't agree with you more. 67 American cents would buy you a pint of Pilsner Urquell in 2002 when I was there. Um, so I had several.
It's definitely the
Um,
exchange rate is still quite favorable.
yeah, amazing. I was also there like 3 weeks before it flooded. They had like torrential downpours, I believe, in like I don't know. I guess it was like July or August of 2002, and obviously has since recovered. But my escapades in that city are to be told another time.
Yes,
Maybe in person over some pints of
it
Pilsner
has a
Urquell.
very lively nightlife.
Yeah, I was single and ready to mingle, as they say.
Well, you were in the right place, clearly.
Yeah. Um, and the girls I was with may or may not have been from London. But anyway, it was a good time had by all. Beautiful. The Charles Bridge was awesome. I just remember people painting on the bridge, and things of that nature. It was just. And how was the weather for you? Given, I mean, it was beautiful when I was there. It was just 3 weeks
I'm
after,
very
wasn't it?
lucky. The one day that we were sort of sightseeing, if you will, it was uncharacteristically warm. I mean, it was in the, I would say, low 70s, bright sun.
Amazing.
So we got really lucky. Because and even they said, yeah, this is not normal weather for October in Prague. The other days, I think, were more what you would expect, dark, a little damp. But none of that, changed again the beauty of the city and the countryside. It's the actual manufacturer is located about, say, an hour and a half outside of Prague in this cute little town whose name I'm not even going to try to pronounce.
Yeah.
Um, I have it written down somewhere, but yeah, all in all, I can't wait to go back.
Cool. So, Robot, tell me just slightly a little bit more. How old of a company is it? Do you know?
About 6 years old.
Yeah, I was going to say it seems to be
Started
new.
in 2018, and it's Bohematic. So I guess sort of like Bohemia, and then from Bohematic, which I guess is sort of the parent company that was started, then they created Robot. So it's kind of the same company. I'm not quite sure where the hierarchy is, but all
Yeah.
in all, they've been doing this for a grand total of just 6 years.
Wow. Wow. And they're already making 200 to 300 a watch. Yeah, I mean, and like borderline, not bespoke, but like you said, like customized. It's good that they found that many people.
Is that they're, most of it, and obviously it's the majority of their clients are Czech, but this is something they're trying to change. And the designs are, for such a young brand, there's a lot of, I think, pretty strong design DNA, if you will.
Cool.
These watches are definitely uh, unique. And when you look at them and you sort of understand where these design cues come from, the owner is a classic car collector,
Sweet.
like looking at like vintage Tatras, Czech racers and stuff like that, and you can really see where a lot of this design comes from. But I
Right.
think with the Flieger Friday, the Czech pilot watch, this is sort of maybe a look at some more I want to say mainstream designs, something that I think has a much broader appeal. A
Mm-hmm.
lot of these watches, I would say it's not going to be your first watch because they are unique. They do stand out. But I think with this new watch they just came out with, it's going to show maybe a more mature direction going forward. So let's see.
Sweet. What's been your favorite release over the last couple years, would you say?
It's interesting. I mean that's a really hard question, obviously.
I mean, there's a lot of creativity out in the world right now.
But I have to say, and I think there's some who would agree with me that what Bulgari has been doing with the Octo Finissimo has really been incredible. And I'm biased; I own one, and it was one that I have good fortune of being able to work on to help create with Waco and Revolution.
Oh, yeah, sure.
But even without that, I think that what Fabrizio Bonamassa Stigliani, like the most Italian name ever, but their creative director, has done with this line is created a new. modern icon.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, it's, you can say, okay, well, now we're just doing variations on a theme. But, that's what happens with, Audemars Piguet and the Royal Oak. That's what happens with a lot of brands is they have something that's popular, and then, that's what the people want.
Yeah.
But I would say that with, time only, chronograph GMT, minute repeaters, skeletons, all sorts of materials, whether it's titanium, stainless steel, gold. I mean, they just really have done something incredible. So,
Tadeo Ando.
yeah. Well, I mean that too. I mean, ugh, it goes on.
Yeah.
I think for me as a collection, definitely that.
What was the process like? Because you guys did that loom dial, right, with Revolution. What was that like? Honestly, like who approached who? What were the parameters? Were there any? Was there any red tape? Like, were there any things that were like off limits? What was that like?
Honestly, it was sort of by accident. I think, like as many of the best things are, they haven't kind of
Yeah.
worked completely. We have to get in the Wayback Machine to right before the world ending with COVID. This was, I want to say, January of 2020, and it was LVMH's first watch week, which they held in Dubai.
Mm-hmm.
Wayne and I were out there obviously to attend the show and to see what new was coming down the pipeline. And in a meeting we had with Fabrizio, they had just actually released the GMT Chrono, and it had won at the GPHG. And so this was kind of the hot model. And we were both musing on, well, okay, this is a great watch. Um, what would we do? How would we make it even greater? But, for us. And Way wanted something sportier. And so for him, the idea was to have a tachymetric bezel.
Mm.
For me, as a self-avowed, self-professed loom whore, I just wanted to. I felt that, the one thing holding this watch back is you can't tell the time in the dark. And so we just mentioned this. I don't even think it was sort of like, okay, we're here to sit down to talk about this project. It was more of like, hey, since we're here, what do you think about that?
Mm-hmm.
And then I kind of forgot about it. And then Way gets back to me and he's like, hey, uh, we're moving forward. He wants to do it. Let's do this. And so it was going to be to celebrate the 15th anniversary of Revolution magazine. So they're going to make 15 watches. And apparently, with the loom, the hands are so thin and there's so little clearance between the dial and the crystal that it's impossible to loom them. At least with the actual Octo Finissimo regular ones. The S's are thicker, the sport ones, so you can do that with them, but not with this one. So the solution was just loom the whole damn dial, call it a day.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you, like, how did you decide to do the dial versus like the hands and the dial furniture?
All Fabrizio.
Cool.
And obviously he's familiar with the limitations, of the actual design.
Hmm.
What's interesting though is the hardest thing to do was the bezel because the titanium is so thin that it was denting it when they tried to engrave it to get the numbers in there. So they had to come up with an entirely new process to do this. And so, as Fabrizio says, this is the most work that we have done on such a small run. Now, word of the watch got out, amongst other employees at the magazine, so we wound up making a 10 extra, so they're 25 in total. And then what's interesting though is there were two dials that were chosen, and one of them is the one we chose, which is white and a very stark white color when it's not glowing.
Hmm.
Obviously, it doesn't glow quite brightly at night. The other, which is what we called the nuclear option, it's like always glowing.
Oh wow.
Dial almost looks like this sort of light jade green,
Yeah.
just so in your face. And we decided against that because we thought, well, really the white contrast is what makes this watch work so well. But then Way came back to that watch. And so there was a second version done in black ceramic. Um, Again, not with the tachymetric bezel, just black ceramic, and then with the nuclear option dial.
Wow.
I had the opportunity to pick that up, at a nice family discount, but I got kids. I'm not a millionaire, so I had to pass on that one.
Right.
Lucky 35 individuals out there who have what is it literally seems like you've got something radioactive on your wrist.
Yeah. I know you have kids, as you mentioned. What are they into the hobby at all? Are they watch people?
My daughter acts surprisingly, never leaves the house without a watch. She loves her G-Shocks,
Cool.
very specific ones. One I had to source through G-Shock from South Korea, some limited edition from a brand I've never heard of, but I was proud that she did the research and that's what she wanted.
Cool.
My son was into G-Shocks when he was younger, and then I made the mistake of handing him down an Apple Watch.
Okay.
And then that was it. He just only wore the Apple Watch until last year in October, we launched a collaboration with Bamford. And so it was a carbon fiber case, mono pusher chrono, very interesting dial. And it actually says RedBar on the dial. And
Cool.
so Paul instantly fell in love with that watch and asked me, if he could wear it. I'm like, sure. And I think I've worn it maybe 10 times, but it's his watch. And now he's in college. He's brought it with him. So I do not own that watch anymore.
That's great. I mean, it's bittersweet for you, but that's great.
Well, when he asked me to wear it, it was one of those moments I think I'll never forget. I really thought I'd lost him in terms of this hobby. And, I mean, he's a really sweet kid. He always comes in and gives me a hug and a kiss before he goes to school. And so he came in the room. I was really tired, jet lagged, and whatnot. So I'm passed out and gives me a hug and a kiss. And I'm kind of dimly aware of this. And then I get the sense that he's still kind of there standing over me. And so, one, well, hey, Paul, what's up? What do you need? He goes, yeah, I was wondering, can I wear the watch? He's all, hemming and hawing, like nervous, like I'm going to say no. And I'm like, now I'm fully awake. I'm not letting him know that I'm fully awake. So I'm trying to play it cool. Like, what? Oh, with the watch? Yeah, go ahead. Go, wear the watch. Sure. Yeah, I don't care. I'm going to go back to sleep. And I'm watching as he like leaves the room. Then I'm like sitting bolt upright. Like, did that just happen?
Right.
Is he back? And then my wife comes in and she's like, "Hey, Paul said he can wear this watch. Isn't this like $2,000-3,000 watch? He shouldn't be wearing that." And I'm like, "No, no, no, it's fine, it's fine. Don't ruin this woman. Let this happen." And so yeah, that's all she wrote. So I can't say that he's into watches per se.
Yeah.
He does love that watch, and I did tell him, when he turns, I don't know where it is, when he turns 18, I'd always said he gets my Rolex Submariner. This was sort of the first good watch I bought, and this is back in 1992. And I thought, this will be just a nice thing. And he doesn't want it. He turns 18 in December, and he's like, first of all, he doesn't want to be that asshole on campus with a Rolex, and I understand that, but he loves the Bamford.
Well, the other cool thing too is like he picked that watch, right? Like as opposed to you sort of picking the sub for him in a way,
Point.
which is kind of cool. Um, he'll probably treat it nicer as a result, you know. Um, that's really really cool. I mean, obviously, if anybody's going to have effect on your children when it comes to watches, is you. I know your mom was sort of instrumental in perhaps what's on your left wrist at this current moment. You've got the perpetual calendar ceramic case, right? Big Pilot. For those who haven't seen, like I think was it an interview with Way you did where you really told the extensive story on YouTube?
It might have been with him.
I think it was. I think that's where I was privy to it. So, can you give the Cliff's notes on how that came about?
My mother, she was always very supportive of my hobbies and my work, and particularly my watch collecting. And one of the things we did is we had this sort of, under the table arrangement where if I wanted to buy a watch, but I didn't want my wife to find out how much I'm spending on this stuff, my mom would buy it, have it delivered to her apartment, and then I'd sort of pay her in installments, that would kind of be able to go under the threshold of the bank of my wife getting a notice and saying, "Hey, what's going on here?" And so this arrangement had been going on for quite some time, again, unbeknownst to my wife. But I thought, everybody wins. My mom gets to prove that she loves me more than my wife. My wife doesn't divorce me. and everything. Yeah, everyone's happy. But here's the thing: your wife always finds out. We are big dumb animals as men. We think we're slick. We're not. We're actually idiots, and so it would all come crashing down on me. But not before IWC came out with the big Pilot Perpetual calendar in ceramic, and I felt like this watch was just designed for me.
Yeah.
This I need this watch. I was already a big fan of IWC, and to me, it just combined everything that made IWC IWC. It's
Hmm.
titanium. They pioneered the use of that. It has ceramic. Again, they're one of the early pioneers in the use of ceramic. The big Pilot is definitely an iconic watch of theirs. And then Kurt Klaus has his DNA all over it. I'm like, I
Yeah.
got this watch. As a pilot watch, it's a ridiculous watch. No pilot would wear this watch. But for me, as a non-pilot, done. Unfortunately, at the time, it was actually quite an expensive watch. I think the list was around $36,000, which
Hmm.
was way out of my comfort zone.
Hmm.
But I had to have it. And so, through some connections with the jeweler I used to work with at the time and some connections with IWC, they said, look, we can get you this watch at a much better price, and sort of go around the whole boutique model because it was only boutique only for the first year, which meant no matter what, you're not going to get a discount on it because the boutique's not going to put. So we got a way around all this. The price again was more reasonable, but still outside my comfort zone. So I'm going to have to sell a couple watches. I'm going to have to put in some overtime, down in the
Right.
salt. But the clock is ticking. I have to, we've got to make this deal now. And so I go to my mom and I say, look, it's a little more than we usually do, but I kind of need to have that money sent to them now. And she didn't even blink. She said, okay, but first you got to do one thing for me. At the time, I had a mohawk. Now I cannot grow one now. Very low. I called it sort of the corporate hawk, and I actually grew it for work. Believe it or not, that's a whole other story. Then they couldn't make me get rid of it, so I thought I looked cool. I did look like an idiot, and she'd been trying to get me to get rid of that thing for a while, and so that was the deal. Shave the hawk, and we're good to go. I shaved it off that very day. Next day during lunch, I come up from my office to meet her. We go to the bank. She sends a certified check to make, and then boom, I get the watch.
That's amazing.
I have to pay her back. And you have to understand one thing about my mom is that if you owe her money, she's going to get it.
Right.
This is not this woman, is a child of the Great Depression and stuff. So money, yeah. So she made it very clear. At some point, I'm gonna have to pay her back, and so I started paying her back. Finally, sold a couple of pieces to make this whole. And just when I knew I had all the money to come and get back to her, she kind of says, "All right, forget it, you're done."
Wow.
Still owed her $10,000, which for me is an awful lot of money.
Still, yeah.
She said, "Well, it was coincided with my 40th birthday," and she just said, "Happy birthday."
Amazing.
I just wanted to make sure you had the money that you were going to pay me back. But once I saw that, then just I have a twin sister. She goes, just don't tell your sister because she's not getting 10 grand from me. So, and so that's, so to me, this watch, it was the last watch where we had that agreement. She was kind of like, okay, the bank of mom is closed now.
Right, right.
But it means the world to me that, that she wanted me to have this. She knew all along that she wasn't going to make me pay her back for it. Um, and of course, she passed away recently. And anytime I put the watch on, I instantly think of her.
Right.
It's something. This watch, if I could have it buried with me, I would.
Yeah.
Well, Paul will get it, even if he doesn't want it. But
Right, right. So what did your mom do? Do you mind me asking?
I don't know. She was a psychologist,
Oh, cool.
which
Was
explains why I'm so fucked up.
right. Well, I know that you're a 90s hip hop fan and you've got me by a couple years. So, I mean, I loved hip hop too. I mean, the Tupac, Biggie, East Coast, West Coast, the birth of Jay-Z, all that stuff like I remember. Um who was your guy?
Well, back in the day, I mean, I have to go a little further back. Um, like Boogie Down Productions for me, KRS-One.
Okay.
That was big time when I was coming up.
Well, this is like the birth of hip hop then, not even 90s hip hop.
Yeah, I mean, the 80s is kind of, where I started. But, moving forward, I mean, look, let's be honest, the 90s were huge.
Yeah.
We had, Brand Nubian was one of my favorites back then too. But yeah, but I really was like Slick Rick,
Okay.
that type of stuff.
Okay.
And it's
Uh,
still in the car to this day. So the kids, they can sing Lottie Dottie with the best of them. I
oh
do
man.
have a cheap version too, just to keep it, a little more modern.
I was gonna say that's almost kind of like the grungiest style of hip hop. I like it. I like it. Also, where are you? Are you at home? Are you in an office?
I'm at
Or
home. Yeah, my home office.
your home office? Okay, cool. Now you've got Revolution magazines behind you. You've got a wall clock that looks to be, I don't know, 18 inches wide, and it has kind of a coin edge bezel.
That's
Is
Breitling.
that? Yeah, I was gonna say it almost looks like a Breitling, but not a
It's the
chronograph.
Navitimer clock.
Okay, so it's the Navitimer. Sweet,
That was
awesome.
my 50th birthday present from them.
Oh, cool. That's nice.
It
How's
wouldn't have needed a watch, but I'll take the clock though.
yeah? The Navitimer is actually one of my favorites of theirs for sure. That's
But it's
probably
an icon. It's a classic.
they're probably yeah. And then of course the Red Bar poster behind you as well, which James Lambden has in his office. Um,
He's the one who commissioned that.
so tell me a little bit. So you and I last saw each other in Toronto a couple weeks ago, and we were talking about the origin story a little bit and how Kathleen got involved. And can you go over that again, sort of Cliff's Notes? I'm sure people have heard you tell this story in certain ways.
I mean, Red Bar, you got to go back to 2007. And that's when I started it with my friend, Dr. Jeffrey Jacques. And except it wasn't Red Bar. It wasn't meant to be anything other than two, friends and addicted watch nerds hanging out and talking shop.
Yeah,
At that time, you really didn't have anyone you could do that with offline. And any one of your friends would, their eyes would just start to glaze over the second you start talking about movements and whatnot. So we thought we had a good thing going there. And the bar that we met at that we found that was sort of equidistant between our offices was called Red Bar. It was a dive bar in Koreatown above a Korean restaurant. This very eccentric woman, Sai, ran the place. And
oh, it was above ground. For some reason, I always thought it was subterranean. For
it's the
some reason.
second place that we met. So we had Red Bar for several years, and then she moved back to Korea and closed. So we found
Uh,
another bar, which we actually spent far more time at, called Ichiumi, which closed down unfortunately thanks to COVID. But that was our home for a decade at least, and that was underground. And
okay,
actually,
okay,
a lot of the servers and bartenders from Red Bar actually wound up there. So we kind of were just back home again.
cool.
But yeah, so it was two of us, but then it was three, then five, then 10. Now we're meeting every 2 weeks, and people are saying, "Hey, are we doing Red Bar? What's up with Red Bar? Is Red Bar going down?" And so it just became Red Bar. Even when we were at Ichiumi, people are still like, "Are we doing Red Bar?" Like, "Oh, what time is Red Bar? What time is Red Bar?" So when it came time to actually create the LLC, the company, and with the name, it was, duh, we're calling it Red Bar.
Sure.
Stylized it a bit, one word, capital R, capital B. But I thought it was, a way to honor our history, but also to honor the original Red Bar, because I had found out that Sai passed away
Oh,
Korea a while back. And so the thought that, this place that gave us our home, is still thriving and now in 85 cities around the world. And that name comes from her. So I hope on some level, maybe that if there's something beyond this world that she's kind of looking down and smiling at all the drunk idiots.
right.
But so in order to turn it into a going concern, if you will, I again am a big dumb animal, and in order to do this right and sort of get control of this behemoth that had grown from nothing, we needed an adult in the room.
Right.
This is where Kathleen McGivney comes in.
Right.
She is the adult, so her official title is the CEO, but she's also the COO and the CFO, and I'm just a pretty face at this point.
Well, okay, so you mentioned the 85 cities, and I guess my question is not just how does that happen, but just kind of like how does it happen in the way that it did, where you have these, I guess, for the lack of a better description, chapters or, cities. So, like, how do you oversee them? How do they become a part of Red Bar? Like, how do I not just have Red Bar San Diego? Because that doesn't exist, but there's a couple like Chrono groups and SD Chrono and all this other stuff. So,
We
like,
actually did have a San Diego chapter. The guy kind of, you know, pieced out on us, so we don't know what happened there.
oh, interesting. That must have been before my time.
Yeah, we're looking, to get back in there if people want us there. I mean, that's the thing. We want to be where people want us to be. Like for instance,
Interesting.
I had no clue that there's actually a thriving watch community in Halifax, Nova Scotia.
Wow.
Turns out there is, and so there is a Red Bar Halifax.
Okay.
So we want, like I said, we want to be where people want us to be. And really what happens is somebody will come to us and say, hey, look, we love what you're doing. I don't have that here. How do we get it started? And, it's very easy for us to do a bit of a background check and see if, this individual, whoever it may be, has their heart in the right place, um, and the means to really put something like that together. And when I say that put something like that together, all it is finding a spot
Right.
and we'll help you. We'll put, your logo together, get your Instagram page set up. We'll obviously tout that on our main site so that people know you're there. And then if from that point, I say it's a marathon.
Got it.
If it's just, again, two of you getting together, pretty soon it's going to be three, it's going to be five, it's going to be 10, and you're going to do the same thing that I did.
Totally.
And so we do that. Also, a lot of times, a lot of the groups that we have were existing watch clubs,
Hmm.
sort of hit a wall, if you will. And by coming under our umbrella, it actually opens a lot of doors, in
Sure.
terms of doing events with brands, with boutiques. There's a certain measure of respectability, if you will. I mean, Lord knows I'm not respectable, but so again, a lot of our groups, a lot of our chapters were actually other clubs too.
Yeah.
How it started again was just there was a group in I think the first one was Chicago.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I think you said that.
Yeah, and they there's people out there. We love what you're doing. We watch every week to see these photos of Red Bar in the city, but we don't have that. And how do we do this? I'm like, well, it's not rocket science. Get some people together, find a nice place to hang out, not too fancy, and just let it go.
Yeah.
Asked me, can we call it Red Bar? I think initially it was like the Commonwealth, like group or something, and then they
Sounds like an investment firm.
yeah, like can we just call it Red Bar Chicago? And I'm like, if you want to,
Yeah.
this is a while ago before we actually made things official. And I think that's how it started. I think Toronto was actually maybe our second chapter, and then they wanted to be Red Bar Toronto, and then that's just how it branded itself. Again, none of this was by design; it was all organic, and I think that's kind of why it resonates. There's nothing
Right.
about why Red Bar is here. It's here for one reason only, to get
Yeah.
people together, like-minded, to talk about watches and have a good time.
Sure.
Because we spend way too much money on these things we don't need.
Right.
Nobody wants a watch anymore, but we want them, and I think that makes it even more special. So that's what I want. I always say, I can't make watches. Probably not going to be very good at selling watches because I just want to keep them all to myself. My place in this industry is to get people drunk and have them make bad financial decisions.
Yeah, I love that. I'm on board, clearly. Where'd you go to college?
I went to Tufts in Boston,
And
Somerville.
were you, I mean, you're obviously a journalist, so were you an English major or is this born out of something? Okay.
Yeah.
Got
So
it.
writing was the only thing I was ever good at. And my father always said, you work on your strengths and you downplay your weaknesses. And I have plenty of weaknesses, which I've been trying to downplay desperately. They're not as easy to downplay as I get older. But yeah, so I always loved writing. And I kind of got into writing for the industry by accident. I was on a lot of forums, which was sort of the gateway when I really got serious about this stuff back in the
Yeah.
early, if you will. So there was Time Zone, Watch You Seek, Purist Pro, and I was on Time Zone a lot. And then I became a moderator for them for their IWC forum, and then later a global moderator. But then through them, I started, meeting other people in the industry, and then I started writing a little bit here and there for IW magazine, some online, watch time, everywhere. And yeah, and that's how I kind of got into it. And then eventually that led to being editor in chief for the US at Revolution.
Yeah.
I think I only lasted about, I want to say, 4 issues. COVID hit. Um, and then, RedBar was also growing exponentially, and it just got to be too much. So I became sort of editor at large. And of course, now I'm complete free agent, so I can write for whomever.
Okay. So how did you find IWC? Like I'm the same way. That was sort of my first love was IWC because I stumbled into the boutique. I've talked about my origin story with the brand at nauseum on this podcast, so apologies to the listener. But you, on the other hand, what? How did you discover it? How did it get across your desk? Like what? How did that all come about?
That is a really good question. I recall, and I don't know why, but I have this very distinct memory of being uh, really aware of the Mark series. And this is going back for me in high school.
Okay. Wow.
And now you have to remember that when I first started getting into watches in my teens, we did not have the internet. So in order for me to learn about watches, I had to go to the boutiques. And so that really meant Tourneau, or, to go to the international magazine shop that was across the street from me. And then they had a lot of the trade publications. And that's when I started to learn, well, hey, this watch and this watch are two different watches, but it says their movement is a Lamania 5100. So I started to learn, oh, wait, they're sharing. Not everybody makes everything. So I started to learn how that side of the business worked. I started to learn about the brands. And then my orthodontist at the time had an office across from the old Tourneau that was on 59th Street in Madison.
Okay.
So I'm a doctor, whatever. Point being that whenever I had an appointment and I was walking home, I would always just have my, face pressed up against the glass, and I'd be looking at the Breitlings and the Rolexes and what have you. And it pretty soon it got to the point where they're like, "Hey, you kid, yeah, you come on in, you know, stop, what do you want to look at?" And these guys were wonderful, so they'd let me try on anything. Um, and I remember, that Reversos and IWC and all these other brands, and I think it took off from there. So when I was finally old enough to afford some watches and we had the internet and I could learn more, to me, IWC was it. I think the first IWC I bought was the 3227 Ingenieur. And then after that, I had the titanium, the Aquatimer 2000. And then I had the Galapagos, the original Galapagos
Wow.
Timer Chrono. And then I got the double chrono, the Doppel Top Gun, and then it was from there that I got the perpetual calendar, and then now I think I only have pilots.
Okay. I was going to ask you, like, what of those do you still have? Or were some of those the ones you were selling to pay mom back?
Yeah, well, so the Doppel chrono had to go
Okay.
to make way. You got to pay Peter for Paul or Paul for Peter, however that works. So
That's such a good watch, man. God.
well, for me, it really was one of those moments. I remember, like a lot of people, I'd be sitting at my desk, just hitting refresh, on Hodinkee and the other sites, when SIHH, would now Watches and Wonders, but then SIHH,
Yeah.
wait to see, like, what's coming, what's new from the brands. And when IWC dropped that was one of their pilot years. I lost my shit.
Yeah.
Right. The dealer, the AD I was dealing with was down in St. Martin. I always had good luck with these people. It was Artistic Jewelers. Luke Alwani was the guy.
Okay.
Like AP, IWC, JLC, Pan, like they had everything, and they had great relationships too with the brand. So you could get the watches and maybe get a little discount too. So I just got instantly was just emailing him like, "Oh my God, do you see this watch? Like, what's the deal? Like, I need to get this." Blah. And he's like, "Hold your horses. I haven't seen it yet. Yes, I know. I'll let you know." And he was the one who got back to me with the bad news that they're making it, but it's boutique only, and it's $36,000.
Yeah.
And of course, we know the story how I finally got it.
Right.
Um, but I kind of miss those days, just that wonder, just what's coming down. I can't wait to see. Um, I don't want to say it's because I'm older and maybe a little more jaded, but I have to say I haven't been as excited, by a lot of what's happening in the industry. I don't know if it's just the industry is maturing, I'm maturing, but yeah, I wish I could go back to some of those days.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's something to be said for that, with the element of surprise. It's a little bit easier to get excited. I mean, it's I mean, not to bring religion into it, but like it's like Christmas, you know? It's like it's easy to be excited about Christmas when you don't know what's coming, but when you get to the age where you're basically telling your parents what you want for Christmas, the element of surprise starts to dissipate.
So, I mean, and I always tried to make it a point once I started getting invited to SIHH,
Yeah.
not looking at all the press releases because, we find out what a lot of this stuff is way beforehand.
Yeah.
So I would almost like not open my presents so that I could walk in and have these meetings and just really kind of be blown away or surprised by what I saw.
Cool.
It's harder and harder to do that now, though. But look, there's always something new, and that's
Yeah.
what I love about this industry is even if I'm, a little more jaded, and a little more weary, and uh, there's still always something that surprises me. There's always that bit of creativity. I mean, and you got to give them credit because every year we're expecting all of these brands to basically reinvent the wheel.
Right. Right.
Obviously, they do it, with varying degrees of success, but there's always, somebody out there who just blows the bell curve, and you're like, wow.
Yeah.
And typically these days, it's a lot of the independents, and it's, some super expensive stuff that, is way out of my price range, but I love
Totally.
seeing it. And I love that they're doing it. And I love that, there are well-heeled collectors out there who can buy this stuff and support this.
Yeah. What do you think of that leak from Paddock this week?
Oof. God, what do they say? If you don't have anything nice to say, then don't say anything.
Okay, fair enough.
That's not me at all. I'll tell you. My God, my God in heaven, what were they thinking?
Well, here's the thing. Like I always like to keep everything positive. And basically I don't know, bit the bullet yesterday on Hodinky and left a comment on their post that was basically like, welcome to the latest episode of luxury watch bundling featuring Patek Philippe, because it's become the new 1159. You're releasing a watch nobody wants, and you're making people buy it, I'm sure, even though it's not out yet, in order to get something that they actually want. And, with AP, as much as like I would love a 37 millimeter Royal Oak, trust me, I would love a jumbo. However, that's impossible. The 41's too big. There's 37 is actually quite good on my wrist personally,
But they also wear larger.
and they also wear larger. Um, and I've been to the boutique several times. And to cut a long story short, why don't you take a look at the 1159? I'm like, okay, so you're charging me $26,000 more for a Royal Oak is basically what you're telling me, because I'm gonna have a watch that's worth or costs 26 grand, and it's gonna sit in my safe because I don't care about it. And it's just like, I don't know. At what point at what point does this become extortion? You know what I mean?
Well, look, they know what they've got. That's what they. It's always a joke. I know what I've got.
Right. Right.
In the car industry, when you're selling a used car, I know what I got. Well, they know what they've got, and the
Yeah.
people will pay it. I think it's a short-sighted business model.
Hmm.
Of course, I've yet to be proven wrong or right about that, rather. So let's see
Sure.
how far they can ride this. But this particular watch, I will say that as much as I detested the 1159, I think it's grown into itself
Well, it's changed.
now, where they rectified a lot of these earlier design mistakes. I think the pieces we have out now are really what it should have been,
Yeah.
which I don't know why that wasn't the case. Let's see. It's hard for me though to see how this complete abortion of a design can grow into itself.
Right. Right.
There's nothing about it that I find attractive in the least. But I'm curious, will the usual suspects start to embrace this and, sing its praises, and will it become cool?
Yeah.
no matter what, it's a Patek Philippe. It's made beautifully. It's finished impeccably. It's going to be an expensive watch, and I'm not going to kid you. If I see one in public, I'm going to want to take a closer look and talk to that guy. So, maybe it's going to find its legs. There's people smarter than me who are behind this watch, so obviously they know what they're doing.
What was maybe one or a few major takeaways that you got from working with Way?
Again, enjoy what you're doing. Now, I was a terrible editor. Let's just be honest here. Late with everything, and just whatever. But with Way, I think people always ask me. He's one of the few people that, oh, Way. What's he like? Um, and I just say, what you see is what you get. Uh, the way that you see on podcasts, the way that you see in interviews, the way that he writes, even that's him. And he doesn't put on any airs. If you go up to him and you're a quote unquote nobody, he doesn't give a shit. He'll talk to you like he's known you forever. So I think with him, there's a certain amount of like, be yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And in his case, being himself is actually paid off brilliantly.
Mm-hmm.
People like him. People want to talk to him and open up to him. And he's also an encyclopedia.
Yeah.
The dash and flash with his, fashion and larger than life persona. When you get down to the nuts and bolts of it,
He knows what he's talking about.
he understands the mechanics of watches, and he also understands the mechanics of the industry,
Mm-hmm.
which
Yeah.
can be very opaque at times. So I think just from Way, I just learned be yourself, but enjoy what you're doing. Because if
Mm-hmm.
anybody is having a good time in this business, it's him.
So, what was sort of the ending of your time there at Revolution like? Like, not the ending, but you said you're a free agent, obviously. You went from editor in chief to
Well,
the
so I
COVID
wanted to
era.
leave, and they didn't want me to leave. And so the offer was, well, look, stay on as editor at large.
Okay.
It'll be like, a monthly retainer, and you can write what you want. And so, and that arrangement actually worked great for a long time. But I started writing less and less. And I think it just got to a point where, like, do you really want to be doing this anymore? Like, you're focusing mainly on RedBar, you're not really writing that much. And so there was just an agreement to say, we had a good time. Let's move on.
I see.
That was at the time too that they were really trying to revamp their U.S. presence.
Mm-hmm.
So to be honest, I was kind of dragging that down, and so they'd signed on Zen Love as the new editor in chief for the U.S. They brought Troy Barmore, who used to work for us at Red Bar, as a content manager, collector engagement, community engagement, and then Stephen Pulverian, formerly of Hodinkee, I think is more of maybe my last position as editor at large. I think as of now, only Troy is left. Um, so I'm not sure, what their plans are going
Mm-hmm.
forward. But that's also this industry. It's not necessarily a reflection on, oh no, they can't keep anybody. It's always this sort of musical chairs revolving door.
Sure.
Somebody leaves one place, and next thing you know, they're somewhere else. And so, I'm curious to see who the new editor in chief. Excuse me, sorry. I'm curious to see who the new editor in chief is going to be. But yeah, so I think they were already trying to make that move, and it's like, hey, Adam, get out.
Yeah.
You
So, with these projects that you're writing now as a freelance writer, are you writing articles and pitching them, or are people actually reaching out to you to say, hey, we would love for you to write X or Y?
Yeah, usually they reach out to me.
Oh, cool.
With you at this point. Again, the focus is Red Bar. We've got some interesting stuff coming up. That'll go beyond just events and collector stuff. So
Cool.
it's taken a lot of time, like and hopefully we'll bear some fruit. It's not really stuff I can talk about until we're ready to do sort of an official launch.
Yeah.
And we're still working behind the scenes with our collaboration watches. So we've got a couple of those that are in the works right now that I think are going to be a lot of fun.
First of all, I love your IG profile pic.
Oh,
What where did that come from?
That is my daughter, Lola. I would assume she's probably around 4 or 5 there. And we were in Connecticut, and she was in the house. I was sitting outside on a deck with a glass of wine, just enjoying the evening air. And all of a sudden, my wife just comes out of the house holding Lola, who was wailing at the top of her lungs, and goes, "This is your problem now." Just plops her right down on top of me. So I'm like, ah, shit. So I'm holding her and my glass of wine, and I'm like, what the hell happened? And she saw a bug. Apparently, there was a moth in the house, and Lola does not like bugs.
Oh wow.
That was the face. So I just grabbed my phone and was just like, so the actual photo is also just me above her, like, but I just
Oh my
that
God.
face of that moment of just such sorrow and such pain and such. I just had to save it, and she hates it. By the way, she wanted me to start charging, like paying her for it.
She wants to license the photo to her dad who took the photo.
I think now she doesn't care anymore, but for a while, when she, I think, first got on social media, and she's like, wait a second, is that? Oh shit, that's me, Dad.
Now how old is she now?
She's 15.
Okay, so this is an old photo, clearly.
Kept this since the beginning, and I'm not much for change, so people recognize me now as a crying girl. If I change that, it's going to confuse people.
That's right. That's right. What speaking of IG, what's the history behind the David Hasselhoff obsession?
Oh, I just love David Hasselhoff. I mean, it's, I remember when the show came out, my mom let me stay up late to watch the pilot episode, and I always loved cars. So,
Oh, we're talking Knight Rider, not Baywatch, right?
Right.
no, no, Baywatch to me was always, the poor country cousin. He needs money, so he's got to slum and do Baywatch. Never mind that Baywatch is like the most popular TV show, syndicated show in the world. For understandable reasons. But no, I like the talking car. So my
Yeah,
favorite version of David Hasselhoff is as Michael Knight. You can't really see it, but I've got a little shrine to him and up in the corner there.
amazing.
Some toys and some plush dolls and a couple of models of Kit. But I also just love David Hasselhoff. I think he loves being David Hasselhoff.
Oh yeah, yeah,
He has a great time. He seems pretty happy. He's got his following in Germany. He seems very self-aware. He knows he's kind of cheesy and doesn't care. I don't know. He seems like a good guy to be into.
yeah. He's in on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. What's the most underrated watch of all time?
Wow. Let me see. I would say among my collection, I have a Bal Mercier Clifton Club
Okay.
ADLC version, and think it's a fantastic watch that very few people remember um, or know of, and just super underrated watch. So that's a very specific example. I'm trying to think what would be the most underrated watch. I don't know. Are there any though?
I don't know. I mean, that's you named a good one as far as I'm concerned.
Mhm.
I mean, that do I even have it out? I tend to wear my watches and I don't put them back in the safe, and then my wife starts to complain because she uses the office too, and then I got to put them all back. No, no, it's not here. I would show it to you, but um, for me, yeah, that whole collection I thought did not get the credit it deserves. And even now, I think if you look at Baume Mercier, they revived the Riviera collection, and I love a lot of those watches, but
Yeah.
nobody talks about them. Nobody.
Yeah.
I don't even think Richemont knows what to do with the brand anymore, which is a
Mm.
shame.
Mm. Yeah. I mean, it's kind of a mall brand, I guess. So it's kind of a what do you do when you're also trying to be a leader in the space kind of thing. Um,
Had an opportunity to really do something with the brand. It looked like they were trying to for a while, and then they just gave up.
right. Right. Yeah, that's interesting. What was your first car?
My first car was a 1988 Acura Integra LS.
Okay, first of all, that's amazing. And so Acura runs deep with you.
Yes, you could say that. That's and now I have my 2007 Acura MDX with the sport package. That is, very specific about that point. But yeah, my first car was that car. I remember there was a comparo test in Car and Driver. It came out on top, and I thought, all right, I like the specs, I like the look. Dad,
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's amazing.
18th birthday present. I was definitely a little spoiled in that regard. I didn't even know how to drive a stick. Dad had to drive it home, and he barely remembered how to drive one. And somehow I figured it out, though. And so, yeah, I drove the shit out of that car. I saw one recently on Bring a Trailer, like in really good condition, black, like mine. And I could get rid of the window tint, and it would be pretty much the same car. And I was so tempted. I think it sold for like 17,000 or something, which is ridiculous, when
Yeah.
you think about what the list price was, back in 1988. But there's no way my wife would have allowed it. So,
Well, so my college roommate sophomore year, who's like a brother to me, shout out Brian if you're listening. He had an Acura Integra the year we lived together, and probably on to a couple years after that. It was like hunter green and maybe tan interior, maybe gray. I think it was a lighter color. But to this day, if I see an Acura Integra, I snap a photo and I send it to him. And I saw a white one only a few months ago. Adam, it was like brand new. Like this car was brand new looking. It was white, probably mid to late 90s. It was whatever era Brian had his car. It was
was it
unbelievable
it
looking.
might have been a Type R.
Could have been,
So
actually.
those are very collectible. Mine
It,
predated that era. But if you can find one of those in good nick, I mean, the prices are astronomical now.
I got to say, man, it held up, design
Hard
wise.
though, because they're usually just really clapped out and riced out and then
Yeah.
just abandoned. So to find anyone that's still in really good condition is it's kind of rare. And so like I said, when I saw that one, I was like, and there was something about them because back then, you could drive the snot out of these things, but
Yeah.
they weren't that fast. So
Right.
I mean, yeah, you can kill yourself, but it's not the same as nowadays when, like a family sedan has, 350 horsepower. This thing I think was putting out maybe 118. And yes, it's a very lightweight car, but it still, it wasn't going to break any speed records.
Right. Right.
Just, it handled well, great sight lines. The transmission was a joy. It was just a fun car, very mechanical. There's no fly-by-wire or anything here. And of course, no anti-lock brakes, no traction control, no airbags. Um,
Maybe some power steering, but that's about it.
yeah, it had power steering and air conditioning, and that was the extent.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, my next car was a little heavier than that, but that was yeah, they were fun.
Yeah. I mean, there's so much to be said for driving a slow car fast than driving a fast car slow. Um, So you still got the MDX with the sport package. I love that. It's fantastic. Um, when's the next global meetup for Red Bar?
It's going to be next year.
Okay.
It was so hard, not hard, I want to say, but there's a lot of work putting it together for Edinburgh last year. And so this year, I think we're going to do like kind of a 1 year on, 1 year off um, situation. And it's interesting. A lot of people really want to do the Bahamas.
Wow.
We do have Red Bar Bahamas. So we want to, obviously, we go to a city that we operate in. But maybe that's the plan. So we've already started to do some preliminary um, research into that. Our man on the scene down there, Bobby, is getting a lay of the land for us, so to speak.
Wow.
I think that'll be the plan. Is and you know what? In this way, it's an easier sell, I think, for a lot of folks. They can say, well, look, bring the family.
Yeah. Is this the Atlantis Resort in the water slide deal?
I mean, we'll see if they can get us a deal. Typically what we do with these things is, we find a hotel that can block off, a certain number of rooms for us at a discounted rate. We need to be able to set up some areas, for the brands to showcase and for us to have sort of meetings and hang out in. So I think one thing though is that industry down there is they can cater to us better than say some other cities can.
Yeah.
Just not to say Edinburgh was not a blast, because we really found a great hotel, a great location, and we had so much fun.
Oh, I bet.
Yeah, this will be a different kind of fun.
Sure. Well, just wrapping up here, man, and thank you for your time. What's the next article people can look out for?
Well, actually, it's not even an article that I wrote, but I was interviewed by the New York Post of all.
Oh, wow.
I think that's coming out this week, and for Watch Week, they do a Watch It shoe. So you'll get some off the cuff, candid musings from me. I don't even remember what I said, so I think we're all going to have that feeling of discovery together.
Amazing. Awesome, man. Well, I think, as you know, I'm flying out this week. We'll be attending Watch Time on Friday. Are you around? Are you doing anything?
I am. I'm sorry you're not getting in time, because we do our Independence Night on Wednesday.
Ah, yes.
Brands, who are in, the watchmakers come out, and we get them drunk.
Right. Well, yeah. I'm bummed I'm missing
They
that
have to
for
let
sure.
them, they got to let their hair down before the show. So
Yeah, totally.
that's our contribution to Watch Week.
Yeah. Well, listen, dude. Thank you so much. Look forward to seeing you this weekend. Hopefully, we can raise a glass.
Totally. Looking forward to it, brother.
All right, buddy. I'll talk to you soon.
All right. Take care, man.
This wraps up this episode of the Standard Age podcast. If you like what you heard, I'd love it if you'd share it with a friend or two. And if you have a moment, please rate and review the show, as it helps others discover these episodes. It absolutely helps far more than you realize. Shout out to Jensen Reed and Super Beautiful for the theme track. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll catch you in the next one. Take care.